Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Melatonin Amps, and we're going to continue to populate the PCB. Next up, we're going to do the fuse holders, and then we'll get the blue junctions on. So sometimes the leads on the fuse holders get a little bent, so just grab a pair of pliers and straighten them up a little bit. But the board is tapped, and whatever side, of course, the component is shown is the side that it goes on. So you're also going to need two really wee little M3x5 machine screws that have a really thin head on them. There we go, got it in focus. So I like to work a lot with the standard long bits without an actual screwdriver attached. It
just makes it harder to over torque and strip something out. So
always back up until you hear the thread click, and now you're engaged, so you can't strip it. So I'm just going to snug it down by hand.
And there's a little bit of wiggle room on these guys, so once you snug it down, if it doesn't look quite straight, you can adjust it before we solder.
Yeah, and now I'm going to straighten them out. And I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to snug it down.
Not too hard here, because it is just threaded into the board.
That's right, it's just threaded through fiberglass, so...
And that's it.
Snug is good, don't over torque. And we're nice and straight, so we're going to flip it over. And now what we'd like to do is get that tab bent. I'm just grabbing some nice flat...
Be careful with this,
pliers.
It's easy to slip off of them and scratch up the board. If you're doing this with, say, a flathead driver or something else, it's better if you have a set of pliers for doing it.
Yeah, now notice I'm not bending them over hard, because if we did that, it would be next to impossible to rework the board at some future date if somebody needs to make a repair. And that's just best practice. Now, while we get a little bit of flux on here, this is a little bit bigger component, so actually going to bring the temperature up a little bit. So we'll bring it up to about 475 C, which is 890 Fahrenheit. Again, you don't need a lot of flux. In fact, you don't want a lot of flux. Trust me on this. This stuff will leave a mucky mess if you have too much on the board. But it's really good for a good solder connection to have a touch of flux. Inside the flux. Inside the solder, there is actually flux, and some of them will have more than others. I like to use I believe it's a quad core flux. Yeah, a multi-core solder, and that means that Charles doesn't have to apply extra flux very often.
Because there's way more than enough coming in right off the solder itself. But that's fairly rare stuff. It's old production solder, but if you're using new stuff, it's better to add a little bit yourself.
Now, I'm going to be holding for just a little longer because I want really good flow through.
And feeding a little bit more.
Yes. Because not only are we looking for a good electrical connection, but we're also looking for a good mechanical connection, because, you know, you have to plug in a fuse and unplug a fuse, yada yada.
Now, hopefully you're not doing that often.
No.
or at all past the first install, but it's always good whenever you have something that needs something installed or removed to do an extra job on holding it down.
Yeah, in fact, you probably will put these fuses in and never visit them again. Now let's go and have a look. You see how we've got a nice little bit of flow through on all of these? Now, you can rework that if you're short. So if you don't quite have good flow through, you would come in and you would just heat up the connection at the pad and just flow a little bit of solder. Don't get too anal about making your solder work absolutely perfect. You'll probably do more damage fussing than you will helping. So just get it looking really good and call it done. Okay, well, let's go grab the blue junctions and we'll get them on too. Okay, so go ahead and grab your blue junctions. Grab your alligator clips. And notice I've taken the plastic off. And these almost always need to be prepped because the way they're manufactured closed.
And you don't want to solder them closed because you might keep them closed forever.
Yeah. So you want a really small slot screwdriver. If you find your slot doesn't actually fit properly, just take it to a belt sander or a little file and just trim off the edge slightly. That's what I did on this one. And we actually carry these little drivers in the store because they can be tough to find sometimes. They're not expensive. So just back your screws up until they're near the top here. That's fully open. And take an awl or a little finishing nail and just come in here and make sure that the receiving tab is open. You see how the wire will fit in there nicely now? Okay, so go ahead and prep the rest of them and we'll see you back in a second. Okay, so let's just start with the three-part junction. It goes here, obviously. Notice how Charles has marked the entrance or scalloping here to show you which way it goes. So just drop it in, and we're going to use the clip to hold it in place. Line it up a little bit, and let's flip it over. Now, we still have a soldering iron a little bit hot at 475. That's probably just a touch hot for these. I'm going to bring it down to 470C, which is about 880 Fahrenheit. And I'm going to put a little bit of flux.
And you want to make sure that that clipper is holding it right down flat to the board. If it doesn't look like your leads are pushed through this much, then give it a look and adjust it.
Now, when you get to soldering bigger components, the hold is just a little bit longer. And I think probably one of the most common mistakes beginner solders do is that they don't put enough pressure. You actually have to make sure that the heat conducts properly, which means you actually have to have a clean tip with a little bit of tinning on it, but you also have to actually be pushing. So don't be afraid to actually apply a little pressure to the pad with your soldering tip. Now notice how I haven't done the middle, because of course the clip's in the road. If we look it over, it's nice and straight. If it was a little crooked, we could actually, now it does move around a little bit in the housing, but if it was really crooked, we could do a little unbending.
You could just heat up one pad and then move it around a little bit.
Unbending? Unstraightening.
No, it's a little straightening I think we want.
Okay. It's like English is my third language or something. Electrical engineering is my first. Okay, so here we go. Actually, building is my first language. I love to build things. And there we go, Bob's your uncle. So you've got 3 more of these 2-part connectors to install.
They all go on the same way, they all go on the same side of the board, and they all face the same direction as that first one.
Okay, hop to it everyone, and we'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we've done here. We've got the openings are all correct, and we've got all 4 of the blue junctions in the correct position. Let's just flip it over and examine our solder work and make sure it's okay. One of the things you want to really make sure is that you don't bridge the solder pads. So there should be a nice piece of open ground in between your solder pads. Or of course you could potentially create a dead short, which you don't want to do. So this is looking pretty good. But just to show you reworking, never be afraid to come back in if you see something you're not certain of, and do a rework now. As you check over your work, So I think I could have probably put a little bit more solder in here. So I'm just going to rework it. So I'm coming in at the same temperature. I'm heating it up. I'm just filling it a little bit more, and then I'm backing off.
You do need to be careful about putting too much on these blue junctions, though. If it flows through the other side, it can actually lock them up.
Yeah. Yeah, so like all electrical components, even the blue junctions, you want to get in and get out quick. You do not want to linger there flowing solder, while you're sipping coffee. Not a good idea. Okay, well done, everyone.